invite Benjamin Ree to come back and talk to us about this completely amazing film. I have to say, it's actually the second time I saw it when they asked me if I would do the Q&A. I'd seen it a while ago, so I thought, well, I have to have it fresh in my memory, and it's even more, it's richer the second time around. I'm not sure why, but anyway, and it's also remarkable. I realized now reading at the end that it's been 10 years since he died. I think before I didn't realize like how much time had passed. So, of course, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll have time for you all to ask some questions. And of course, the first one, the obvious one, is how did you hear about this story? How did you get involved in it? How did you approach the family, and what was their response?
So, I learned about the story. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Through Facebook. Mats' uncle, that you see in the film, he was Mats' first assistant. He was also my teacher at school, so he taught me filmmaking. He played in all my amateur films from when I was 11 years old. And he published on Facebook a story about Mats that I read. And I cried a lot reading that. I thought it was an incredible story. But I did not think of it as a documentary, a potential documentary. But I called him up to just let him know how much Mats' story meant to me personally. And then he told me that his brother had filmed his whole life. He'd been there with the camera from the day he was born. And he also told me that they had stored a lot of the dialogue of their communication, so they had an enormous amount of dialogue. And the way they were writing this is that it almost looks like a movie script. So Mats would write, Ibelin seems sincere yet saddened. And then I thought, oh, if they have that big archive, I'm talking about 42,000 pages, then it's maybe possible to tell his story with the aesthetics from the game. So that was the idea. And then I approached the family. And they were very unsure if they wanted to be part of a documentary. For them, it was like opening up a wound again. They only agreed to me digitalizing.
What year was that actually? Just
I read the article in 2019, and I approached them in 2020. Then I began digitalizing those video tapes, and that's where I saw myself together with Mats. So my parents and Mats' parents had been in the same group of friends back in the late 80s, but my parents moved away from our capital, Oslo. So they lost contact, so I did not meet Mats again later. And then the family, they said yes to be part of the project after some weeks of thinking about it. I think one of the main reasons was that they wanted to get to know their son better. They had, of course, heard a lot of stories about who he was inside that game and what it had meant to so many people, but they did not kind of know it emotionally, because they still did not understand the game. So they were very curious about that. Is it possible to make a film here where we include everyone into that virtual world? So then they said yes.
So, but 42,000 pages, that would be a very, 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 very long script. How did you go about, I have a question about the words, how did you go about making a story? Well, I have many questions, but how did you go about reducing that to a story? And then how did you go about with the visualization for the animators? I mean, obviously you worked with it. Did you have any, was his avatar available? Could you see, did other people still have their avatars? How did you build the visual world?
That's a good question. So, the first thing I saw was that it was a coming of age story there. So a lot of the same things I have experienced in my own life, but in real life, must experience that inside of a game. Making friends, experiencing love. He also lost contact with two of his best friends. idea was to like have the framework of the story is about sorrow and grieving, and it has kind of a circular symphonic structure. We tell the story many times. It's told first in the opening credits, then it's told again by the parents, and then it's told by Mats after rewinding the tapes, and then the film suddenly becomes an animated film. And then we meet Mats' friend Lisette. It's told again from her perspective, and then we change form every time. So then we have 2D animations. The last time it's told is at the funeral. For me, I think that's also how grief works. For me, it comes in waves, and you need to revisit that person's story. So that's the kind of structure. The film within the film is the animated part. And I knew nothing about World of Warcraft before this film. I never played that game before.
That was another question.
And it's owned by a very big gaming company called Blizzard. They are again owned by Microsoft. So we actually made the film without asking for permission. We just took their world. It's possible to download that from the internet. And we just took it, stole it. And then made the film.
So you mean that the landscape, the road he runs down, all that actually exists? If anybody here went to World of Warcraft, they could go to that same, run on the same road?
It looks like that, exactly like that. So the level of details, because of the huge archive, we know the location, we know exactly how they look like, we know what was said, the exact time, the year. So we actually asked for permission afterwards, and what we did early on, because I hadn't played that game before, was that we did research on YouTube, and there's a huge kind of fan community on YouTube with fan animators, and they made animations based upon the game, but it felt very including. Like, my goal was that my grandmother would feel included into this world also. But at the same time, that it would be kind of recognizable, and it would be a good representation of the game for all the gamers. So I contacted the boss of a company from Stockholm. I thought they made great animation. I met the boss of that company, Rasmus. And the first thing I asked him a lot of questions. How does your kind of company work? And he told me it's only him working in that company. And we had dinner together, and then I asked, okay, so how do you work then alone? On daytime he's working at the storage. In the evenings he's making these YouTube animated videos. And then I asked him if he could go to his office, and he said yes, of course. I live together with my parents. So one person has done all the 3D animation in this film alone. Which is very extraordinary. I have 2 others that have helped with rendering and lighting. And after the film now, he has earned enough money to move out from his parents' place because of the film. Yeah, so he's done an amazing job. And he knew that world very well. So you can also see a lot of the camera work is also inspired by the gaming experience. You have a lot of 180 degrees turnaround the camera, so a lot of zooms, and that is the aesthetics that he knows very well. So we kind of, I come from kind of documentary and cinema background. He came from gaming background, animation together.
Happy marriage, I would say. And I just want to note, actually, I have admired your composer in other films, and it's just the most marvelous score. And I should have said, I don't think anybody said when they introduced you, I had actually seen your previous documentary, The Painter and the Thief, which I loved. It was on this same kind of circuit a few years ago, and if you all haven't seen it, look it up, because it's really a great film.
Thank you. It's on Max now, I think.
On which?
On Max.
Oh, it's on Max, great, wonderful. Maybe, I mean, I have more questions, but I don't want to hog the whole thing. So why don't we see what people want to ask?
So did Microsoft started to pay you for all the commercials you made for them now?
So what we did was that almost 3 years into the making of this film, we wrote them an email. And they didn't know about this film at all, and like said, hello, we're a Norwegian production company, small production company. We are taking your world, your IP. Can we use that world for free without any involvement from you? That was the question. That is like typical Norwegian email. And then they like replied. We did not know if they would reply at all, but they replied that they wanted to watch the film. So we traveled to California, to Irvine, to their offices. My producer is very optimistic, so she was very relaxed. I was freaking out because we did not have a plan B, and we hadn't told our investors about this risk. So I have asthma, so I had to take many extra doses of this Ventolin asthma medicine before that meeting. So we showed them the film. I almost didn't dare to look up at the screen actually, because like 3 years of work was invested by so many people into the project. And after the screening, the boss of Blizzard and World of Warcraft, he turned around, he was crying and said, this film is fantastic, you will get the rights. So that was an amazing moment. So yeah. So yeah, and I think that was the only way we could have made this film independently. That was very important to us. And I don't make films without having final cut myself. Then I would find another job. That's the most important thing for me to have.
But I am going to ask you another question, because actually I had the privilege, the first time I saw this film was at a screening where Matt's parents were here. They had come, I guess, to New York for the first round of screenings. And can you just talk a little bit about what they're doing now with the film? Because I know, I happened to find out accidentally that there was a screening the next night at the JCC in New York for the disability community. And it seems like, I mean, they obviously, I assume, have embraced the film and you, and are also using it to continue to keep Matt's legacy alive, but also to work on the issue of accessibility, disability. I don't know, you tell us.
Before Mats passed away, you know, you see him change throughout the film, and he changed a lot. He went from being very, like, hiding who he was, and then towards the end of his life, he showed the whole world who he was. By writing a blog, but also being a part of an informational documentary made by the government. So Mats, towards the end of his life, he really wanted to be remembered. He really wanted to be remembered. And since he lived such a short life, that was something he really, really wanted to make an impact. And in a way, I hope that we can honor that with this film. Like Robert, the father, he's actually counting how many times he has watched the film. And the last time I checked in with him, he said that he has watched the film 157 times. So they have used the film as part of their kind of healing process also. For every screening we have gone to see, they are staying in the theater watching the film. And it's part, you know, it's such a, like, the moment when they thought that their son didn't have any friends. It was a very isolated person, did not experience love or friendship or making an impact. You can just imagine, like, then after his passing, realizing what kind of impact he had and how many friends he had and everything he has experienced. So they are watching the film and crying and laughing and kind of reliving, because for over 20 years they thought their son did not experience any of these things. So this film has become very important to them. Yeah, and also all the voice actors for the characters in the film, they all have disabilities. So we used the casting agency from London called Visible Agency, and they've done an amazing job with the film. We are also working now with getting specialized equipment, because that was something Mats promoted. Without that, Mats wouldn't be able to communicate at all. So that's been very important to us. When the film was released on Netflix, there's actually a gravestone now inside World of Warcraft in honor of him. So after the Netflix release, people from all over the world with their avatars went in front of that gravestone to light lit candles. And they also actually launched a pet that you can buy inside of the game. And that is something they do at research sometimes. And all that money will go to cure Duchenne, and they're doing research to find a cure for that illness. So, and they are getting a lot of money because there's a lot of people playing World of Warcraft. So a lot of kind of things that we did not do this, but it's happening because of the film.
How did you find actually the particular gamers you interviewed? Because they're such amazing and strong characters. The two women especially, and the leader of the community. I don't remember everybody's names, but were there people that you chose and then didn't use? Were there more people you could have? You must have left a lot of things out.
Yes, for a long time the film did not work at all. It was way too many people. What happened was that the transitioning from the real world to the animated world became confusing because for every person we see, we also need to meet their avatar. So it became too many faces to recognize. So after 1 year of editing the film didn't work at all. And then we took away like half of the interviews we did, we just removed. And then we began match cutting directly from the interview faces to the avatar faces. And then that began working a little bit. And also, you know, we did around 30 test screenings in a theater with this film. And for a long time, you know, it's very difficult to, like, the film becomes an animated film suddenly. And a lot of the audience members didn't want to go there. So that created a lot of work. And for a long time, the audience, like, after like half an hour, they didn't want to watch it anymore. So we needed to find kind of transitions that made those kind of transitions work. So that took a lot of time, but we had and we used, of course, the interviews where they were the most emotional. And I think the people you see in the film, they hadn't talked much about Mats because it was difficult for them to talk about with their friends because they didn't quite understand how can you be so close to somebody you never met and seen. So when we did that interview, it felt very fresh for them to talk about and the emotions. And I think an interview close-up can be very cinematic, especially when you have emotions, when there's many emotions going. So for example, Lisette from the Netherlands, her underlip is shaking a little bit. She's both angry, confused, sad, so many mixed emotions. And I think close-ups of those kind of interviews are always great because you don't quite understand what's going on. And it's also a way of them processing what really happened.
Oh, they're a very strong element of the film, obviously. And was it hard to convince them to participate?
They have actually been a part of the making of this film. So for every draft we had, we sent it to them, and they would give feedback. So they will write, my character wouldn't laugh that much. My character would have a bit more brown eye color. And that's what I really loved with Mclay's voice as well. When the opening of that film, it's a beautiful film and it's a great kind of pairing with this film, I think. But they were part of choosing kind of how their avatar should look. So when I showed the whole guild, the whole friend group, the film, the people who see in the film had seen it many times. They've been a part of making it. But a lot of Mats' friends had not seen anything. So I was, of course, nervous before that screening. And after that screening, they told me, this is exactly how you remembered Ibelin, which is a great compliment. And they said, he didn't want to be portrayed as a saint. You portrayed him as a human. But then I said, but you did one big mistake, Benjamin. And I was asking, what do you mean? And I was thinking, a mistake can mean maybe 1 year more working on the project. And they said, Ibelin, you did a mistake with the animation. And they said, Ibelin liked women with more leathered clothes. And I asked, can you show me? And then they showed me. And then we put all on those kind of the clothes, and then we locked the edit after that.
Okay, other questions from the audience?
Was that, I forgot, was that
Yeah.
her at the funeral?
Yes.
Yeah, the question was that Lisette at the funeral for the people in the back who couldn't hear?
Yes. So Lisette was carrying the coffin at the funeral.
When I watched it at home, I didn't recognize that.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's, I think, like there's not maybe 50% sees that it's her, and we tried so many things to do it, and we couldn't kind of have a voiceover or like a text there. Yes, yeah.
I think on a big screen it's pretty obvious,
Yeah.
but if you saw it on a TV
It's
first,
easier.
this is why we need to continue to go to the movies. Everybody.
Or buy bigger TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody else? I'm sure there are more questions.
So, thank you for this film. It had a lot of resonance for me. I have a son who, not exactly the same story, but, and I thought it was just beautifully crafted, going through all the different layers and circling around and back. It's the only thing I've seen that really gets into taking away from the disability issue, but that whole kind of glimpse into that world of people who that's a big part of their lives. And I'm wondering if there's any other films or anything that you know of that does that, because I think it's just for that alone, it's amazing.
Are you thinking about the recreation of an avatar life, or
How the role that games play in the lives of a lot of people.
So there are documentaries that explores virtual life. A film called We Met in Virtual Reality is one quite well known. But to my knowledge, this is the first time a film recreates an actual lived avatar life. I don't think that has never been done before. The way we're doing it, because we had those like thousands of pages of archive, and we could use the world and interpret that world, and hopefully then invite everyone in. And that has never been done before. And I think that we are living more and more digital lives, and I think we need to tell those stories as well. And this is one way of doing it, and I hope that more people will do that in the future as well.
In the real world, they actually never speak, right? It's only text.
Only text, yeah.
So we, as a movie-going audience, because you've recreated for us, have the privilege of hearing it, but
yeah.
They only texted with each other.
If we had just filmed the screen, it will be a lot of text there, and very uncinematic. Yeah, so that's why we're kind of, and you know, in the game you can't do you have one way of laughing, one emote for laughing. That's why they're writing out kind of emotions and actions, because they want it to be specific. They want it to communicate very specific emotions, and then it's possible for us to interpret that.
Somebody else? Yeah.
Was Max, how was he financially sustaining himself? Or, I mean, is it like today you can get paid on YouTube for doing different things, or there are blog posts people want to donate to it? Or was it on his parents?
So the question, I'm sure people in the back probably couldn't hear, the question is, how was Mads sustaining himself, and was he able to earn any money through his blogs and things, or was it all, did the money all come from his parents?
Yeah. So in Norway, we have socials where
And what's your immigration policy?
So the answer is that this is paid by the government. Those 10 to 11 assistants, that's paid by the government. Also the equipment is paid by the government. That's why we pay taxes. And in a way, I hope also this film can say something about the value of a life, because if Mats hadn't gotten that help, he wouldn't have lived to 25. He would probably become like 17 or 18. He needed breathing machines. He needed a tube to clear his throat every 15 minutes. Towards the end of his life, he could almost only move his fingers. And he was still able then to communicate and help friends all around Europe. And I hope also that's why I say that the film is also about the value of a life and the value of having a system that helps people like Mats. If he hadn't gotten that equipment, he wouldn't have helped, for example, Mikkel and Xenia, the mother and the son for Denmark. And he actually changed that, but he also saved lives. So that's I'm very happy that we live in Norway where we have a system like that.
Okay, I think I got the sign that we should wrap this up, but I think everybody is invited to join us upstairs in the lovely, lovely cafe here for a reception. So you can ask Benjamin more questions. Thank you.